In Creative Studio 7, we can use the border corner feature in SAM. This can be particularly helpful in auditioning patterns for quilts to see which ones may work or look best. To set it up in SAM, you would first select your corner pattern, then select the repeat by holding down the Control key and selecting the pattern, and then click on border corner. Since I'm doing this in SAM, I'm going to have my snaps on. I'm going to follow the setup prompts in the directional diagram, and you'll see this star and the prompt say click upper left outer corner. I'm going to click upper left, and I'm going to show this to you in the orientation of the bed runner being mounted vertically so that you would be chunking patterns. So I'm going to click across 20 inches, then to my lower right corner, 20 inches, which is a reasonable quilting space for my quilting machine. You want to emulate what you would be able to stitch at your machine. Then I'm going to click lower left. Following prompts, the star is showing and the words upper left inner corner, upper right inner, lower right inner, which should be right on top of your first outer boundary, which emulates your belly bar at the machine, lower left, and after that you're prompted to enter border length. This quilt was 92 inches. Entering the length, Creative Studio will look at that number and do the math for us to calculate the size of the repeat that you would need to chunk down the side of the quilt. You would also want to pay attention to margins while the setup box is still open. We have this project set up at a 0.03 margin. If you were doing this in a new project of your own and your default margin is 0.25, you can change that, which will help with the calculations and also help you with the number of adjustments you need to make after you close the setup box. The other thing to pay attention for is orientation. So orientation for this pattern is an upper left pattern design, and it's L-shaped. If you have a pattern that is different than that, then you can change it in the set corner type box. The other thing that you can do while the setup box is still open is you can dynamically change or try different patterns to see if there are others that you would like to try. So for instance, I have this point-to-point swirl purl pattern, and I can click on that corner pattern and it will place it, and we already can see that just clicking on the corner pattern, there's no room for a border repeat. So this pattern would not be a good choice. I could click on another pattern, which is a smaller pattern, and then hold down my Control key, select the smaller repeat, and I get an error message because that pattern will not or cannot be sized to fit in the space, so those repeats would not work as well. Creative Studio in Border Corner sizes the patterns to fit the border. You don't have to change the sizes of the patterns before you try and use the feature. You can use just a corner pattern and use Border Corner to set up just the corner repeats. You can also see that by selecting just the corner pattern, if I had forgotten to hold the Control key down to select the repeat, you don't have to start over. You can just hold the Control key down while the setup box is still open, and Creative Studio will recalculate and fit the pattern in. If you like this setup box, but you also want to try another setup, then you can click again and it will open up another Border Corner setup and you can go through these steps again. If you're done with this setup, then you can just click OK to close the setup box. I'm going to use the Again feature to set this bed runner up in the other orientation. So before I do that, I'm going to select the corner pattern and Control select the repeat because I want to keep this border corner set up. Then I'm going to click on Again, and Creative Studio creates a new border corner quilt group. Now you can change the grid on the fly, so I'm going to change the grid size to 92 inches so I don't have to count all those little squares. And then click upper left, upper right, change my grid size back to 4 inches, click my lower right and my lower left, then my upper left inner, upper right inner, again at the belly bar, lower right, lower left. Now enter border length, and remember that we're doing the other orientation, so the length of this is now 20 inches. And Creative Studio put in 1 repeat. And if you're happy with that, then you can say OK. And now we have both setups. We have the setup in this orientation and the setup in this other orientation. I would note that if I were actually quilting out this size border, 92 inches, that I would not quilt the sides and all the way across and down because of shrinkage. So I would select a few of these patterns and mark them as sewn. And also for this bed runner, if I were to load the quilt horizontally to do this quilt, then I would mark both side repeats as sewn. I would toggle them sewn. I would not stitch them until after I had stitched the top and then placed the bottom patterns and stitched those. Speaking of bottom borders, let's set up border corner for a bottom border. I have the pattern selected still. Click on border corner. It brings up another quilt group, and up here in the very top of the setup box, you don't want to miss it, there is a box that you want to check for bottom. This tells Creative Studio that you're doing a bottom border, and it's going to change the prompts in this directional diagram to emulate a bottom border. So once again, I'm going to change this to 92 inches and click my upper left, upper right, change back to a 4-inch, click my lower right, my lower left, and this time if you look at the prompt, then the upper left is right up at the at the pickup bar. So upper left, upper right, lower right, lower left. Then again, you need to put in your quilt length or border length, and you have your setup for bottom border. You can click OK to close the setup box. This setup is going to stitch from right to left. If you want it to stitch from left to right, then you can click on the first repeat on the left, do an order join, and it will change the stitching direction to stitch the other direction. Also, as I mentioned, for the top border, I would not try to stitch it all because of shrinkage. I would select some of the repeats on the right-hand side or left if you stitch from right to left, and toggle those patterns as sewn. One last thing I should mention about setting up borders for narrow projects like table runners, or in this case the bed runner, where in all reality the quilting space at your machine would fit the whole border at once. Creative Studio will not calculate a top border and bottom border and side repeats all in one. So you still need to go through the steps for creating the top border and a bottom border.
So we appreciate you taking this journey with us. We hope that you have learned a thing or two.
And we'll see you next month.